This is UMass basketball.
I know this. I'm the most animated coach that you've probably ever seen in my team.
Thompson in the front court. Thompson will lay it in. And one.
Hey, he's just being Frank.
And welcome into another episode of Just Being Frank, coming at you from the Champion Center here in Amherst. We started off with head coach Frank Martin and a special guest. He is the ultimate college basketball insider joining us on this episode and the most connected reporter in the business. You can find him at Goodman Hoops. He is Jeff Goodman. Jeff, thanks for taking the time. Where are you coming to us from on this July 4th week?
Well, cloudy and rainy Newburyport, Massachusetts, a place that Frank Martin still has not been to since he's been back in my state. I've gotten to Amherst. He has said he'll get to beautiful Newburyport, which is a kind of an old New England town. It's north, kind of on the way to Brewster Academy, Frank. So if you get up here, the meal's on me, all right? There's plenty of good spots here. I know the weather has sucked lately. But after the 4th, after you get back off the road in July, we'll try to do
it. Hey, Jay, just so you know, Jeff tends to forget. I'm a Miami guy. I love the ocean. I struggle going to the ocean when the weather's bad. It depresses me. I want to be able to go out there. I'm just joking. I told Jeff I was coming, and I still haven't done it. So it's.
All right, well, a recruiting trip to see Jason Smith. That's all you got to do. Come up on the way to Brewster. You stop for lunch here. You get a lobster roll, and you're good. You're good.
Before you came on, Frank and I were just chatting about the recruiting trail and the different things that head coaches have to do in the NCAA and the way that it's changed. So, Coach and Jeff, why don't you guys just kind of elaborate? Coach, we'll start with you. What this month looks like for a head coach in college basketball, and what are some of the changes that you guys are dealing with?
Yeah, it's which is one of the things I want to get out of this conversation is, let Jeff kind of let everyone know how he cut his teeth when he was, a young whippersnapper like I used to be back in the day, and July's changed. We used to, the season would end, you'd have end of year meetings with players. We all knew the one guy that was going to transfer. He wasn't happy because he didn't play, or player coach didn't get along, or he had issues within the team. And so he, it is what it is. I'm not anti-transfer. It's a dynamic that we all have to be in a place where we're at peace. And so we all knew who that guy was. But now you go through the whole spring and summer, and every week it's a new guy. Hey, I'm leaving. Hey, I'm leaving. Hey, I'm leaving. So you're constantly trying to put a team together. And if you remember years ago, we pushed to get this summer bridge started just to keep kids on campus so they weren't home, because majority of basketball players don't have a place to be a safe haven at home, for lack of better words, and to provide structure. Well, now we have to do it because we don't know our team. We got brand new teams. And but not Jeff. I was just telling Jay, usually by the time we got to July, I had a handful of 10 or 12 rising seniors and rising juniors that I really liked. And I knew I was going to go in and watch them play hard. So then I can make a consensus effort on getting those guys on campus in August, before unofficially, and even during July, before all these visits and all that start in September. And I got no handle on this right now. I mean,
because you've been working on transfers. How can you?
And you can't travel in the spring. Like we used to go watch all these guys in April. I can't travel in April anymore to watch underclassmen.
Well, you're allowed to. Try to clarify for people. You're allowed to. You have 2 weekends, but you can't take them because you've got to host transfers.
There you go. So I can't. It's hard for me to go recruit Jeff Goodman and Jay Burnham and say, hey, come visit my campus because I need you next year to play. And when you come visit, I'm somewhere else. I'm not on campus. And so it's hard. It's hard to go evaluate in the spring now underclassmen.
It better be Dunkin' Donuts, by the way.
I cheated this morning.
Oh no.
Gas station. I'll leave it.
Oh, wow. Old school.
But I had to fill up my tank, so I killed two birds with one stone. But and by the way, I'm not one to complain because I'm blessed. I make a crazy dollar figure. But the fact that I used to pay $2.70 for a large iced coffee, and now I'm paying close to $5.
It's insane now.
And it's in 2 years. It's incredible. But that's a different conversation. I'm not dragging Jay into politics here, or Jeff. But Jeff, give us a little background, because I know it, but I don't think, and if you have, I've never seen you speak about it. Kind of where you started, because recruiting was right up your alley. It was all about the kids and opening up doors for people.
So I'll give you the Cliff Notes version really quick, because you'll appreciate the first interview I ever did. I think I was 14 years old, and it was with James Worthy. And I actually went into the hotel that the Lakers were, for people that don't know, and there's probably some young kids on here who don't even know who James Worthy was.
Yeah.
One of the greatest ever to play for the Lakers with Magic, with Kareem. So I went down to the team hotel when the Lakers were playing the Celtics. I think it was the day before the game, and went in there, me and my buddy, and basically asked James Worthy, could we interview him? And he said, sure, call me later. It was the off day before the game. Just said, call me later. And me and my buddy were like, what the hell? Like, really? We weren't prepared for this at all. It was like on a whim. I was like, let's try it and see. And he said, yes. So you'll get a kick out of this. So we go home, and we didn't have questions prepared at all. So we wrote down like 10 of the dumbest questions you could possibly ask, right? Who was your idol when you were younger? My voice hadn't changed yet. I sounded like a 10-year-old girl, and I was a 14-year-old boy. So then we're like, how do we record this thing? It's like back then, again, it's not like Zoom, not like any of that stuff. So I don't know if you guys remember. So my dad had an answering machine with these two little micro cassette recorders. So I'd hit record on one of them, and it would beep every 2 seconds. So James Worthy gets on the phone with who he thinks is like a 10-year-old girl and my buddy, and every 2 seconds it's going beep, beep, beep. And this dude did I don't know, maybe it was a 10-minute interview, whatever it was. He did it, and I'll never forget it. So that kind of helped start me in the business a little bit of just kind of, and for me, it's been more about relationships than anything. You know that, Frank, like getting to know people. Obviously, I love the game and love the sport and really love all sports, and started doing everything. Started doing freelance for the Washington Post, USA Today, writing about Tom Brady when he was a rookie, then covered the Bills and the Sabres in Buffalo for the Associated Press. Got into a little bit with Ted Washington back then, which was the wrong person to get into it with. And then kind of came back and started help a startup called School Sports back here in Boston. And they were doing like high school stuff. And I wanted to try to step it up and do some recruiting. So I was interviewing like the best, high school basketball and football players in the country, and doing features and whatnot on them. Then I got into the recruiting game, and that's when I first met Frank. Started at Prep Stars, Scout, working with Dave Tillip, and kind of got the bug. The first thing I ever broke, I think, was Rashard McCants to North Carolina, and did it by accident. Just called them, was talking to McCants, and said, what's the latest on your recruitment? He said, hey, I actually just got off the phone with North Carolina. I committed. And I'm like, you committed? So I wrote it up, posted it on, I don't even remember who, I think it was Prep Stars at the time or whatever, and it blew up. It blew up, and I was like, man, this is kind of fun, breaking stories, So started getting out on the road, covering recruiting, didn't know what the hell I was doing. I mean, I remember, Frank, here's a good one. So I remember first one I ever went to really was Slam Dunk to the Beach. And I'm sitting next to a dude. I'm not going to say who he was, but I'm sitting next to a dude under the baseline. And I'm like intimidated here. I don't know what's going on. And Slam Dunk to the Beach is a big boy event. Back then, it was the biggest event. So it's intimidating. And I had no idea. I'm talking to this guy next to me, an assistant, and I'm trying to pick his brain a little bit. Not being a pain in the ass, but just like, hey, man, I need some help here with how to cover it. And he was a complete arrogant, wouldn't give me the time of day. And here I was just trying to figure it out a little bit. Like 15 years later, head coach calls me about that guy. He goes, what do you think of him? I'm thinking of hiring him. I gave him that full story. Guess what? He didn't get hired. I'm like, just treat people the right way. Again, and I know a lot of people think I'm an ass. I get it. A lot of people do. The one thing I'll say is I'm pretty consistent with the people that I go after. If you look at the people that I go after, they generally are the same type of people. They're people that have treated other people like. Generally, they're not people who treated me like. They're people who have treated like their staff, managers, GAs, players like. Those are the people. You do that, I'm coming after you. Period.
Do you still have the tape from the James Worthy interview?
I do. Yes, I have a bunch of them.
You pulled it off of those micro cassettes and made it digitalized?
No, I got to buy. I think I ordered one of those little micro cassette recorders years ago. I got to play it for my daughter, who is now trying to get in this business and full circle, going to her first AAU event this weekend in Chicago, a women's EYBL event in Chicago, and covering. She's interning for a website called Peaks. Jeff Rabjohns does the best job out there for team sites for Indiana. She's a freshman, going to be a sophomore at Indiana now.
That's great. Congratulations. You know, I that's how I started to just trying to run a Radio Shack and find whatever I could to record things. And then obviously now you don't have that luxury anymore to be able to pull you out of the fire at the last minute with the audio equipment. But you kind of mentioned something interesting. And Frank, I'm going to take this down a different road now because, you know, you've been through it all. I'm assuming those early websites that you were posting on were blogspace.com and some oddities. You've made your way through the big boys. You've established yourself, and now you guys are, you know, really running with this Field of 68 media network and the things you've been doing. Last week, there was a lot of layoffs in this industry, especially at ESPN. I want to just get your thoughts on that, what you saw from the wreckage, and then to the future of, you know, sports media and what direction we're going in.
Yeah, it's really hard for me because, it's hard for me, number one, because a lot of those guys at ESPN were my friends. Like a lot of really, really good. LaFonso Ellis is probably, Frank knows him, maybe the best human being you will ever meet, period, on this planet. Like LaFonso is elite, like the nicest guy ever. Will send me like Happy Father's Day every Father's Day. Like he's just salt of the earth. So Nick Friedel, some of these guys that I knew well when I was at ESPN, I feel horrible for. But the business is changing. I mean, it is. And I don't think it's for the better. You know, I know, again, maybe I'm not supposed to say that, but I think the bar stools of the world have changed it. And again, not really for the better. I think there's an entertainment value there, which, listen, I love entertainment. I love it. I love screwing around as well as anybody. In fact, I've thought of a good prank for Frank at some point that I'm gonna get him with. I'm gonna get him with at some point, Jay. And when we get him, I'm gonna video it and we're gonna put it on this podcast. Okay, when I get him. So I'm all about having fun, screwing around, acting like a kid. But at the core of what I do, it's still about information. It's still about providing as much as I can to the fans. And I will have fun doing it as much as I can. But, like, there's a lot of things where you can't. You want to, like, I'm all about reporting. That's the core of what I've always done. Get it right, right? Who cares about being first? Get it right. That's the most important thing. You know, I've been wrong a couple times in my career, and, man, it eats me up. And there were like weird ones of how I've been wrong. Like Trey Burke, after his freshman year, he told me he was leaving Michigan. He told me he was gone. Packed up his stuff, left. So I said, according to a source, Trey Burke is gone. right? He's leaving. He's going to the NBA. Well, he gets home, and his dad and Beeline are waiting for him. And they're like, no, you ain't going anywhere. You're going back to school. So I'm wrong in the eyes of all the Michigan fans. And then when Trey went to the championship game, I remember asking him, I'm like, Trey, are you okay now? You're going to the championship game. Can we just put it out there that it was you? You were the source? He's like, yeah, I don't care, whatever. But I was wrong. And again, like, I just think too many people now want hot takes, want to be first, instead of wanting to be right.
Hey, let's combine something there, Jeff, because it's the hardest. What's the word I'm looking for? Balance that I have to deal with in the world of recruiting, and with the people that cover recruiting. Is, it's what I can't just come to you to break a story when it benefits me. Right. When you got something that don't benefit me, and you ask me, I can't hide and then expect you to respect me. But with the young people, it's their moment to shine. It's you only get one time as a high school senior to announce what school you're going to. And it's wrong for me to leak that information ahead of that young person and their family. But you comprehend this. But there's a lot of people cover recruiting that don't.
I used to be, Frank, I used to break every story of every kid. You know this, when I was at Scout, I would break every story. Now, that was kind of pre-Twitter, so there was no outlet for these kids to break it. Now, everybody wants to do an edit when they've got their top 22. Everybody wants to do an edit when they narrow it down to 10, 5, and then make a decision. Like, I get it. I wrestle with it, though, because part of my job is obviously to break news. I could break every one of these kids. Every one of them, before they commit, I could literally, if I spent the time, I could break every single one of them. But it's almost like there's an unwritten rule now that you let them have their moment in high school. In high school, it's like, okay, my unwritten rule has always been high school kids, unless they do something so egregious or illegal, it's off limits to be negative about it, right? You just don't do it. You just don't do it. It's more about teaching, right? More about trying to teach them. And that's what I'll do with them. Generally, if they tweet something, a lot of times I'll DM them, or I'll reach out to them, or I'll reach out to somebody close to them and try to tell them, hey, you know what? Next time, maybe they should do it this way. When you get into college, all right, like now I struggle. Here's what I struggle with more than anything, Frank. Caleb Love's a great example, okay? Caleb Love signs with Arizona. And I'm not the biggest fan of Caleb Love's game. I won't lie. I think he plays an AAU game, and he doesn't really guard. Obviously, he had an unbelievable run 2 years ago to help North Carolina go to the national title game. So he's got super talent. And I think that's part of my problem. He's got so much talent that I hold him to a certain level that he should be playing at more consistently. Anyway, so when I speak real about Caleb Love, I feel like now he's probably making more money than I am this year. Can I do that? Is he a quasi-pro where the rules have changed for some of these guys that they're making real money now? So can I be real about Caleb Love? I don't, tell me what you think of that, because I have a hard time with this one.
Jay, I'd be curious to hear your perspective, but as a coach, I think we're starting on my side. We're starting to go down the road because, everyone talks about NIL transfers, but there's two other rules that were implemented at the same time as those two. And that's, I can no longer hold players accountable for not going to class, for screwing up off the court. I can't do anything other than not play them. Well, my job's on the line if I don't play them. Or I can make the whole team run as part of basketball practice. Well, then I just created a problem. I'm going to have a fight on campus. Now I got a major problem because, so, and then the last one is now they can have agents, which I get it, man. It's not 1972 anymore. But from a coaching perspective, what was always held over our heads is like, well, you get to leave whenever you want to, and we don't, which is not accurate. I speak publicly. Jay, one of the reasons I think Jeff and some of the national media guys kind of like me is because about me, I speak the truth and I don't hide. When I left K-State by choice, I had to write a check to the U.S. government on 40% of 1.25. Okay? I didn't just walk away and say, hey, I'm taking another job. I had to write, you do the math. I know what the math was since I'm the one that wrote the check. That's not an easy check to write, especially when you've been a head coach for 5 years. You're not making that kind of money where you're protected. But the other part to that is now the players are making money. And so it's just a matter of time before a coach says, well, I can't play him because you don't go to class. Some stuff that used to be completely off limits and protected, I think that's coming because you got a guy that's making money for playing basketball. Why is he going to go to class? He don't care. Yeah. He's making 250 grand because he's good at basketball, not because he's got a 3.7 GPA. But I'm being held. I still get punished if my guys don't go to class. But how?
What do you have over them? What do you have over
them? And then what we always did,
playing time. Your playing time. That's it.
Held them accountable privately and protected them publicly. Why would we do that anymore when, it's the world that we're creating? I'm wrestling with that inside. So Jay, I'm just curious.
Well, I think the question I'm hearing is it now valid for a national media member to be critical of a student athlete? And I think my argument would be that they always have been, and maybe it wasn't fair to them before, but now more so than ever, it is, Jeff, to that point. And I actually, I want to twist this a little bit now because the two narratives that I hear, are the mid-major, which is where we're at here at Massachusetts. The mid-major can't succeed anymore. But then you look at the Final Four last year. So, Jeff, how can these two things exist at the same time and to the success of some of those programs making it on the national stage?
Well, I think maybe you just need to get down there to Boca, and that gets kids to have some retention, right? They don't want to leave the beach in Boca in FAU. Listen, I think there's some luck involved because everybody's always said for the last couple of years, well, you got to have great relationships with these kids. You got to have great relationships. You can have the best damn relationship you want for these kids, but if you're going to offer them $25,000 and somebody else is offering them $300,000, where the hell? Listen, as a coach, what are you telling them? Exactly. Hey, go take it, my man. Go take it. Like nobody in their right mind is going to tell the kid to stay for the difference of $300,000. That's not right to the kid. Okay. Now, again, if it's close, if you're talking 25, 50 grand, whatever it is, if it's in the same ballpark, or even Brandon Miller last year, he's a good example at Alabama. Okay. Brandon Miller took less money, significantly less money to go to Alabama, according to his family. That's what they told me. Then he could have gotten somewhere else. But they understood the value of playing for NATO's, of playing in that system, that it would help him. And boy, didn't it, right? Like, think about it. Think about how much more money Brandon Miller is going to make even on his rookie contract by going to Alabama as the number 2 pick, as he could have been, let's say, if he got into the wrong spot for more money and been the number even 8 pick.
Hey, why don't I ever get credit for my system? Like, is Nate Oates better looking than me or something? I mean, like my system.
He's got hair. He's got hair, Frank.
The best statistical one-and-done season in the history of college basketball was me. And his teammate, Bill Walker, was also a draft pick, and he had a monster freshman year. Why is my,
rank system?
Come on. No, it's, hey, Jeff, now, here's a place where, and Jay, this might get a little dicey here now, so, tighten your belt.
We do that. We tend to do that, Frank and I. That's
because like you said, there's a lot of young guys in your side of the business that just throw stuff out on social media, and it just creates all kinds of nonsense and BS. But there are a good number of guys that actually do their legwork, and they are, I hate using the word connected, but they do get conversations from the right people when they meet them. When someone's in my locker room and I'm fighting to build that relationship so I can coach them that year, but there's people working behind the scenes trying to cut deals to get him to another school. My question is, because you see, I've never believed that, like when the whole FBI stuff went down, let's not, you know what the title of this show is.
Yep.
You knew and I knew that stuff had been going
for years, forever.
Right?
Forever.
And now it's not my place to be talking about other people. It's not what I do. But I've always understood why, guy in your shoes, I can't put out what that AAU coach or that high school coach or that young kid and their families trying to get done. I always understood that. But now that they're in college and they are receiving NIL money, you think someone in your shoes is going to start putting it out when player A at this school is being recruited? Because if that happens in any professional organization,
you're saying tampering. You're basically saying tampering.
And you know what's going on.
But you need, the hard part is, and people always ask me that, like, this could be related to a different topic, but they're like, well, why don't you write it if you know it? And I'm like, there's a big difference between writing something I know and having proof on something. Like the Greg Marshall story that I wrote years ago took me literally 6 months of 50+ interviews. And you know what I waited for? I waited for Shaq Morris, whom Greg Marshall punched, to go on the record with me. I had it 5 months earlier, everything. But I waited and waited and waited till Shaq Morris was ready to tell me on the record, and then I had one other player on the record to confirm it, and had about 5 other sources off the record that were there to watch it. So, like, to me, again, I heard it. I knew it was true. There's a difference between knowing it's true and proving and having the proof to show to the general public, because otherwise you open yourself up. If I had written that story with Shaq Morris 5 months earlier, according to sources, well, there's a chance that somebody could have gotten to Shaq Morris after I wrote this story and said, hey, come out, I'm going to give you some money, come out publicly and say this never happened. There's a chance. And how do I look? I just wrote it per sources instead of having him on the record. And listen, once you got him on the record, you got it. You got it. It's hard to get people on the record these days.
Yeah. I'll give you a quick recruiting media deal. So I get hired to South Carolina, and we get a commitment from a young man from Louisiana, and I get a call from a guy that covered our team down there. It's my first year there. I'll never forget, I'm in Home Depot buying some stuff because I just moved, and guy calls me and says, hey, I just got word that I'm not going to say the kid's name.
Yeah.
Got in trouble, and I got the story. I spoke with the girlfriend's aunt. Either you speak now or I'm running with it. I said, really? So you got the side of the story from the girlfriend's aunt, and you're going to run with that story? Well, they did. I said, I'm not talking to you.
Did you try to tell him off the record that it wasn't accurate?
I tried to tell him, I said, don't write the story yet. I'll speak with you. I don't even know you. I'll speak with you. He said, well, if you don't speak right now, I'm running the story. I said, go ahead, man. Do what you got to do. We didn't get the guy. Well, the guy went on to another league and became the leading shot blocker, leading rebounder for that university in that conference. And it was a big loss to us. And I forever, now this is me, people think that this is me. Other guys in my business, my side of the fence, they hold grudges to the end. I mean, they're ridiculous. I get embarrassed with some of these guys, how petty they are with some stuff. And And, but I eventually, 5, 6, after the Final Four, I went up to the guys. I'm like, let's start again. Because I wouldn't take the guy's call. And he's not a bad guy. But
it's a teaching moment in a way, right? Especially if it's a younger media person. Sometimes you got to learn the balance of, again, getting both sides, unless like if you're 100% sure you have like a police report, something like that, it's different. But in that scenario, if you're pushing back on me and I don't know you and you're saying, hey, man, this is not accurate, just so you know, there's another side of the story. I'm going to be at a point then where I'm like, you know what? I better do my full research on this one. I better make sure before, again, it's about being right instead of being first.
Jeff, let me ask you this. By the way, amazing follow on Twitter, covering all levels of basketball at Goodman Hoops. Also, the Field of 68 Media Network. You've got the Goodman Hummel podcast. There's a bunch of podcasts on there to go and listen about college basketball and the college athletics world or pro world in general. What if we made you the NCAA czar? Okay, with all
I'd quit.
Wait, that's out. You're out. I'm sure you thought about this because it seems like fast-moving legislation, state to state is different, NIL, transfers, whatever. What are some of the things or 3 things that you would implement to stabilize, accelerate, change, keep the same NCAA basketball?
I mean, I try to have a cap on NIL. I try to have some sort of like salary cap type deal. Yeah, where at least, teams like UMass can compete, right? If there were a cap, I don't know what it is. Let's say even the cap is $2 million for
Jeff, how do you do that?
You can't. I know. I don't know if you can. I'm just saying, like, that would be what I would try to implement, because right now and it always has been the haves and the have-nots. So I don't know if it really matters at the end of the day, because, Kentucky and Kansas and North Carolina and Duke are getting the best players anyway. I don't think this changes it, other than the fact that I do think there are some schools that, again, have money, and that money gets them into that top echelon. I'd find a way to try to make it a little bit more fair across the board. The other thing that, to me, here's an easy one, and this is probably down the list of things, but it's such an easy one for me, is with officiating. Everybody complains about officiating, right? It gets bad, especially.
Frank never complains.
Frank never complains. That's right. Never. Actually, he really doesn't.
Yeah.
I've never really met an official. Seriously, I'm not kidding. I know a lot of them, and they never complain about Frank. Because usually, again, Frank can talk to all the coaches want, Jay, is to be able to talk to these guys. Literally. That's what they want as much as anything, even if they're wrong.
But here's Jeff, to that point, because I don't bitch. That's the one thing. I make my point. I let it be known when I'm happy, when I'm not happy. And at the end of the day, I respect those guys, because those guys work their tails off. Everything they do is getting scrutinized by everybody.
Oh, they get killed. You think you get killed, they get crushed during a game.
But now this is where, to your point, all we want to do is be able to talk.
Yeah.
And it's when officials allow me to speak to their groups, is what I always tell them. Like, if they get a call wrong, they're getting reprimanded. If that call that's wrong that gets them reprimanded goes against me, I'm losing my job.
But they're human, Frank. But they're human.
Yes, but I'm not trying to get them to not get it wrong. They have to understand that their energy and my energy is different.
I know, but you guys talk to them too much. Not you specifically. You guys are in their ear. You won't shut up. So how can they do their job that well if you guys are talking?
Now you sound like me on the sideline when they get mad at me, because when I get mad, I make my point loud. But then the guy over there has been yelling at them every single play and thumping or whatever. Right. I tell them, like, don't give me crap. I don't say that word. I say a better word. Don't give me crap. That guy hasn't shut up the whole game after every time you blow your whistle.
I say this about Calipari. I say this about Cal. Like, enough at some point. Like it's too much. How is this guy supposed to do his job when you are talking to him in the whole game? Anyway, get back to my original point.
Yeah, my thing with talking is not like come have a conversation after every call.
Right.
Young officials, when I get mad at that mistake, or at least what I view as a mistake, they got to understand, number one, the coach. You go in, Frank's not a whiner, but when he feels you did something wrong, he's going to let you know.
Sure.
You can't be, you can't allow official. Listen, I used to be, like everyone talks about my background, all the stupid stuff I did. And everyone, Jay had our strength coach on the call, and we used to bounce together. Everyone thinks bouncers is about getting in a fight. Like, you can't wait for the fight to go down. No, you're always trying to de-escalate. And officials should know, like, yo, these guys' jobs are on the line. And the older guys, the Roger Ayers, John Higginses, all these guys, they comprehend that. And when they here's a great Jay, I'm sorry, I interjected. I should have shut up.
No, this is good.
Here's a great referee story. So we're playing, it's my second year as a head coach, and we're playing Kansas at home. And one of the officials on the game had jobbed us really bad earlier in the year. And when I mean jobbed us, I don't mean he cheated. When officials are inconsistent with what they call, that's what pisses me off. So if you never call hand checks, and now you come in and call hand checks every single time against my team, I'm pissed because I've had you before and you've never called the game like this before. So we had one of those situations in a game. Those calls cost us. So we lose. So now this guy is on the game. It's a big Monday game. It's K-State at home, sold out. We got Kansas. And this guy starts making the same calls again. And I go bonkers. And one of the older referees, he's retired now, he comes running over. And he goes, Frank, stop. I'm like, bah. He goes, stop. Just listen to me one thing, just real quick. I said, what? He says, is there a better looking 65-year-old man in this arena than me right now? I just started laughing. And he says to me, he goes, we got this, man. We're not going to let this get out of whack on you. And it got me right back to coaching my team. But you got some of these young guys like I had this year.
Yeah.
He starts, and he did 10 push-ups before the game, so he's a little swole up. I used to do 10 push-ups when I was young. Now I do 6. What's the big deal? He's standing the other side of the court staring me down. And I'm sitting there saying,
he's ready to go. Yeah, he's ready to go.
I'm like sitting there saying, like, wow, it's a young guy. I'm sitting there saying, what is he doing, man? Like, are you kidding me?
How many push-ups should I do before every game? Before I do the TV broadcast?
Johnny, if you're going to officiate, the minimum's 10. If not, you don't get moved forward in the business.
Jeff, let's go back to the point you were trying to make here on the officiating.
So I want a universal assigner. That's what I want. I want a universal assigner so that whoever isn't going from UMass to flying to Omaha the next day to then the next morning flying to Miami. Like, there's no point in that. It's stupid. It makes no sense. And again, the problem is, they're not going to pay these guys. I get it. They're not full-time employees. So you can't keep them from working maybe 15 straight days. But you kind of can. If you have a universal assigner, he can say, hey, listen, I'm not putting them on more than 4 straight days. Or again, if it is 4 straight days, it's 4 straight days in the same region where he can wake up in that hotel room, not have to fly the next day. He can have an hour drive, whatever, from Omaha to Lincoln or something like that. But the way they've got it now, it's so effed up that these guys are working, again, multiple leagues. So these assigners for every consortium, that basically an assigner's got like 3 or 4 leagues, usually a high major and then a mid and a low. So they don't know maybe what that official schedule is, where he's going next, where he's come from. There needs to be one person in charge of all of it so that he can kind of, again, get it to a point where these guys aren't flying everywhere, aren't going in again, working a 7 o'clock game at night or a 9 o'clock game and then waking up and doing a noon game in a different state. It's
You
stupid.
save money, right? If you were to use that, and then you could use that savings in a different manner, maybe they'd get more money per game.
Yep. Totally. It's just, again, it's stupid. I don't understand it. You know what? I really need to I wanted to write that story. That's one story I've wanted to write forever. The other story I've wanted to write forever is, and I'm going to do it at some point, is breaking down search firms. And they're honestly, and they're hirings. I have most of
Hold on. I learned about this when I got into college sports, but I had no idea what it was. Can you give us a background as to what the search firms are?
So most of the search firms are complete sham. There's a few that are good, but I've killed them for years because I think it's a complete joke. Basically what it is athletic directors, a lot of them, hire these search firms to help them with the process. Some of them lean on these search firms more than others. Some of these search firms charge anywhere between like 25 grand. I think Eddie Fogler charges the least, or did, like 25 grand, all the way up to maybe 100 grand to bring them a bunch of names first and then vet them. Like, the only part that I think the search firm is good for is vetting the candidates, doing a background search. And then also what the search firm can do is like through Frank's process, you're talking about the AD having some cover. If somebody asks him, hey, have you talked to Frank Martin? The AD can say no, and he's not lying, because the search firm was the one who talked to Frank or Frank's agent. So a lot of this stuff goes through the agent and the search firm instead of the athletic director and the coach anyway, until it gets towards the end. Basically, all that's happening is the search firm is calling Frank's agent, Brett Just, and saying, hey, does Frank have interest in UMass? And Brett Just will get back and say, yeah, he's got interest. And then when it gets to a point, then the AD. But again, a lot of these are done in a way that the AD gets hired. The search firms also do athletic directors. So what will happen is the search firm will hire the athletic director, and in turn, then the athletic director hires that search firm for every damn job. And he wants to move up too. So it's just,
Seems like
here's
interest in
here's the dynamic that that I struggle with. I was lucky. I've kind of been on the high horse for a while there, where people were actually interested in hiring me, and I refused to speak to search firms or ADs as long as they had a coach in place. And the one time I did speak, there was not a coach in place, and that was at South Carolina. Not last year, the year before, my last year, South Carolina. About a week to go in the season, I get a phone call from a peer. He's like, yo, you all right? I said, who knows? He says, well, so-and-so is running around calling this guy, and this guy to replace you. And I got pissed. I got pissed, and me and the guy that was running that search, I hope to have dinner with him one night. That's wrong. One thing is doing legwork through,
but that's on your AD. That's on your AD more than the search firm.
Oh, no doubt. But one thing is doing legwork through ADs and agents. Another thing is when there's actual coaches talking, right? And while somebody is still in the chair, that should have been managed better all around. And that's the part. And I don't think the search firms dislike me, but I'm not like their favorite king.
Well, you don't play the game. You don't play the game.
Correct. I kind of, I kind of came up, Jeff knew me when I was underneath the rock. And then all of a sudden, I became a head coach. I didn't become the sexy assistant.
It flips quick, didn't it, Frank? It flipped so quick for you, and it does for most guys, where all of a sudden you're an assistant and you're an anonymous assistant.
Correct.
And then you become a high major head coach, and it's like, holy, my world just, and you don't even realize it at the time, do you?
No. Jeff, I say the story all the time. I'm at the Final Four. I was with Huggs. We get to K-State, and Huggs gets a phone call if he would take the Arkansas job at the Final Four. Hung up. He goes, no, I'm not going. I'm not moving to Arkansas. I'm happy at K-State. Hangs up. This is on Saturday, the day of the semifinals game. I leave Sunday. He calls me Monday at 6 o'clock in the morning. We got a problem. He's still at the Final Four doing head coach's responsibilities. I'm back in Manhattan, Kansas. I'm thinking a player got in trouble. I'm like, what happened? He says, Beeline's leaving. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. And I knew the one school that he would leave K-State for was West Virginia. And I went on Monday morning, like freaking out, like, what do we do? We've been here for 11 months. I got a young daughter. I got a marriage that's less than 2 years old. And 3 days later, I'm the head coach. And because of that, Jay, and then I'm not going to, Jay, you've been around me for a year. Jeff's known me for a long time. I don't toot my horn. I'm not a self-promoter. I don't run around trying to tell people the successes that I've had or whatever. But my first 5 years as head coach, it's the 5 winningest seasons in the history of K-State. Okay, everyone talks about Michael Beasley. That was my first year. That's the worst record we ever had at K-State in my 5 years there. So over that 5-year period, it's the 5 winningest seasons in the history of the school. Talk about the coaches that have been there now. So I was worried about doing my job. I wasn't worrying about selling myself to the search firm guys. And my agent was a gentleman named Richard Katz, who was an attorney who was also Huggs' attorney. And I met Brett Just at the very end of my tenure of K-State. And so I never really I wasn't the sexy assistant, so I didn't
Have a guy. Yeah, Katz wasn't a guy. He was a lawyer.
That's it. He negotiated a contract. He read a contract. And so I wasn't that sexy assistant. So I don't have those long-standing agent search firm relationships. So I'm always on the outside of those conversations. But the search firms, they put the president in place, then they put the AD in place, and
That's what I was trying to say.
And then they put the coaches in place. And it is what it is. I ain't mad at them. It's
The way the game is played.
they're making money, but the business is very all the what do you call those? What the guys at VCU started it back in the day.
Yeah, Villa 7, Villa 6.
That's what it was. It was a group of ADs and young hotshot assistant coaches in the same room, and search firm guys. And they built. Everybody was about you got to build relationships. Well, the relationships were not can you do a job, is who you know so you can get a job, and that's why I think, my opinion, I'm not trying to protect me. That's why you have such turnover in our industry, because a lot of guys are getting jobs that are bad fits and are not prepared for the responsibility when they slide that chair over. And,
100%.
Good dudes, and they work, but
Listen, I'm not an Eddie Fogler guy. I know you are. I'm not an Eddie Fogler guy, but here's what I'll say. Here's what I'll say in his defense. Eddie Fogler at least watches the film. He knows the coaches. Now, again, is he as up on it now as he was 10 years? Probably not. But at least he was a former coach, so he can look at it a little bit differently than some of these search firm guys, Jay. They never go in the gym. Some are really good. Like there's a few, like I think Chad Chatlos is really good. I think he works at it. He calls a bunch of people, gets a bunch of opinions. And then there's other guys that just have no clue and are not in the gym and don't know the people.
Yeah. And here, I'm gonna give you a behind the scene story. So in 2000, when did Coach Larinaga get hired at Miami? 11 or something like that? It was somewhere. It's 11.
Yeah, it was 11.
Everyone thought when Frank Haith left, everyone thought Frank is walking to Miami. And I have a lot of connections down there. I know everybody down there. I know a lot of people that are very involved in high places at that university. And I immediately got calls by real people, not gossip people. But everyone thought I was a shoo-in. Well, a certain search firm went into the decision-making room with 4 people in there and absolutely destroyed me. Destroyed me.
And that was it. And you're out.
I've never met this person, which is the same way with me with media. If you want to come after my team, how we play, me, who I am, at least have one sit down with me. At least interview me one time so you can have an idea of whether I'm a BSer or I'm a straight shooter, whether I can answer questions or I'm going to avoid questions. And it blew my mind. That was my introduction. I didn't know what headhunters was before that.
Well, people don't know who
I
you
wasn't
were.
taking, by the way, I wasn't taking the job, and that's the truth be told. I was too young in my career, too young in my marriage to go back to an area where I got a lot of like stuff that didn't need to come out.
A lot of distractions.
Yeah, correct. In my marriage, in my personal life, and my professional life. And by the way, what a job Larinaga's done, because I comprehend the challenges down there to build a college basketball program. But that was my
At least Larinaga wasn't going to go running around at the clubs. We knew that.
yeah.
The right hire,
I
right?
wasn't going. The clubs are coming.
Country clubs. He was going to go to the country clubs, not your
The
clubs.
clubs are coming to me. Are you kidding me? No.
You and Lennon
Truth be told, Jay, that was my introduction to search firms. I was like, what? And then the decision maker in the room called me to ask me about Larinaga. Like, what do you think? I said, do it. He's a heck of a coach. He's going to win games. But, and I didn't know Coach L great, but I knew Chris Caputo pretty good. And, but the bottom line is that's how influential they are. There were some prominent people there that wanted to make a run at me. And this guy walked in and crucified me. I've never, at least shake my, if you want to like sucker punch me, I'm cool with it. At least shake my hand one time. So, it's, but that's the, that's the stuff, that's the power that exists in that world.
Sidebar, I am open if any search firms or agents are listening. I still am without representation in year 20 of broadcasting. So
Smart move.
clear.
Smart. Don't pay the 10%,
I will
the
not.
7%. Frank only pays 4. All right.
Oh,
Frank's only paid 4. Media has to
kid.
pay 10.
Hey, hey, Jeff, let me ask you this, because I've never asked anybody this question. You know what I've never had? A conversation with a search firm person about a job. Is that rare? I'm just asking.
I mean, I guess I feel like the search firm is going through your agent most of the time, so you don't even need to. By the time, again, in most cases, I don't think the coach is talking to us, especially a guy like you. You're already established. You're not an assistant coach. You're not a young mid-major head coach that those search firms want to get to know, and those guys are working the search firms also. They're meeting, but
they because of my unbelievably chipper sideline personality.
yes, it is.
A lot of athletic directors
Are scared.
perception of me.
Yes, they're scared of you.
And which is fine. I do that to myself. I'm not mad at them for that. But
I think ESPN helped. I think ESPN helped to do that to you.
you should.
We would have, when I was at ESPN, Frank and I would have conversations. There's nothing I could do, even if, like I worked at ESPN, I understood it, but I would tell Frank, like, man, you just got to be careful, because every time you do this, you got to know that the producer in the truck or the director, they got like a Frank cam.
Hey, you guys are like, this is why this Being Frank podcast, Jay, is awesome, and I'm really enjoying it, but it's going to get me in trouble.
Oh yeah.
Because I got too many stories, man. I'm willing to share my story.
Or Jay had no idea how long this spot was going to go today. He had no idea.
So I listen, man. I just told you about my success at K-State, okay, and then I get to South Carolina, and we end up in the Final Four, and so now we're in that league meetings that spring after we go to the Final Four. And I'm sitting in the meeting, and, I've been put on all these national committees for a reason, because I'm willing to share what I believe. I'm not saying that what I believe is the right thing to do, but I'm willing to share my opinion where it matters in the decision-making room. Now, if it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. It is what it is. But I don't just sit there and nod my head. And so all the big wigs from ESPN walk in. And, and Jay, here at UMass, we haven't been able to do it yet because we haven't had any success, so it's minimal attention. But I am as any media person that wants to cover my team, unless they're a complete uncredentialed lunatic, I give them access. And I allow them to come in, see practice, and, the whole deal, and games, and locker room, the whole deal. And so I'm sitting there at the meetings, and all the ESPN people come in, and they're just getting ready to promote the SEC network, and they're on us about more access. So I raised my hand. Yeah, Frank. And I said, who gives you the most access in this room? Oh, he said, it's you. It's not even close. I said, okay. I said, so how many more do I need? He said, how many more do you need for what? I said, how many more Final Fours do I need before you start treating me like some of these other coaches that also get pissed on the sideline, but you never put the cameras on their face? And they were like, they didn't know what to say. I was like, remember, I watch film for a living. So I watch all these teams play, and I know who the coaches are. I think you guys know too, and I'm not meaning you two. This is my conversation with them.
When somebody does this, Frank, or did this?
Or when they call timeout because the other team went on a 10-0 run and their point guard turned it over 3 straight times, the cameras don't go to that guy's face. The camera goes to the other coach who's clapping, and they protect the guy that's mad. I just said, when do I get that kind of cover? Because since we just went to a Final Four, I'd like to think maybe I get a little protection, but, just little behind-the-scenes kind of conversation.
I got to say, when we do those MTEs, it's really one of the only chances I get waiting to set up our equipment so that other game is going on the court before your game starts. And there's been some that we've been to over the last 4 years where the opposing coaches are just constantly on the official. Constantly. You don't realize it until you're actually sitting right there and you're saying, my God, this guy won't shut up. And I don't see that with Frank. I think people see the expressive
outbursts. They see the outbursts.
Yeah.
But it's who I compare Frank to? I don't know if Frank's gonna like this or not like this. But like Fran McCaffrey's similar. He'll have these outbursts and then he's fine. Like he'll have them for a short period of time. They're at a high level. Now, he'll probably go after the officials more than you do. And outwardly, he goes bananas on the officials. But you'll go after, a player, and then you're done. But it's short, going from 0 to 60 pretty quick, and then you bring it back down. Am I wrong?
But wasn't that when coaches, because you see, this is the whole search industry, Villa Sevens or whatever those things were called. We've created this cookie-cutter persona of what a coach should be. You guys are Northeast guys. I'm a South Florida guy who we didn't know basketball down there. I freaking watched TV in the Big East days. Isn't that what the coaches were?
Well, I say this all the time because that 30 for 30 that they did on the Big East, which was great, really highlights the characters that were the coaches back then.
And
how much fun was that?
Oh, I miss Calhoun. I miss Boeheim already. Like
DJ. Yeah. My man Louis at St. John's. Rolly at Big
John. Yeah.
Big John. Hugs' favorite line was like, Rolly would be doing backflips on a sideline. Louis be yelling. Boeheim be insulting everybody. And Big John would just stand there with a towel over his shoulder, and people say, oh, he's so mean. Like, what is he mean about? He's just standing there.
No, I miss the personalities, period. Like, when we started this pod, one of the things you were talking about was like, the summer recruiting. And I'm going out. I don't know when you guys are going to release this, but I'm going out Wednesday morning to Rock Hill for the Adidas, and then I'm going to go to the Peach Jam. And like normally 10 years ago, I was so excited to go out because you had personality. You had, I don't know, some more juice, really more than 10, probably when Sonny Vaccaro had ABCD camp. And you had tournaments in Vegas at the end of the month. So you had, ABCD early, and then you had Vegas at the end. And there was just juice around it. It was fun. It was entertaining. You had illegal going on at every grocery store. You had meetings. I would walk to the Hard Rock at night, late at night. And the Hard Rock had this bar, circular bar. And you would have more illegal meetings, Jay, than Tim Floyd was doing one, I think, with Renardo Sidney's father one night or something. Like, it was awesome, though. And I didn't care. Like, I know I probably should have written about a bunch of this shit, but I was like, I just want to drink and have fun. Do whatever you want to do in Vegas. Like they say,
Hey, Jay. So the Peach Jam, I worked the first Peach Jam in 1995. Nike.
It was 95?
1995. Nike flies me up. George Raveling flies me up. They're starting this new event called the Peach Jam. I'm like, what? Are you kidding me? But they're going to pay me $500 to go to Augusta, Georgia and pay my expenses. I'm in. So go up there, whatever. Well, the Peach Jam has evolved to become like
The premier event.
summer event. And so the NCAA, too many coaches, too many players, too many teams, AAU coaches. The NCAA says we need to put a presence there. So they placed all these young women to go in there to enforce. They'd walk around to make sure that there is no contact. And hey, Jay, you know where all the meetings took place? In the bathroom. Like, so you got all these dudes in the bathroom. So you got 10 players.
Because you're not allowed, for people that are watching, coaches are not allowed to talk to the players or even the AU coaches.
Yeah, so if you literally had to use the men's restroom, you go in the restroom, excuse me, get out of the way, and you'd have 10 AAU coaches, 10 players, and 10 college guys having a meeting inside the bathroom.
They'd stand next to a kid at the urinal and tell them.
Yes, that's exactly right.
And so we flash forward to today where everyone says, hey, the game's changed and this and that, but stuff like that's been going on for decades.
Yeah, I just wish, again, it was a little more fun and entertaining. You know what they should allow you guys to do, Frank? They should allow you guys to, bring, one poster, and you can write whatever the hell you want on that poster throughout the whole event. Like do something different. Let's make it entertaining, fun. It is so boring now. And part of the problem is Nike, they don't care about promoting. Like, remember ABCD? When Sebastian Telfair played Darius Washington, it was almost like we had like LeBron against Kobe or something. Like, they built this thing up and Sonny had a way. Like, I'm not the biggest Sonny guy, but he knew how to promote, man.
Now, tell me that we don't need Sonny, who used to keep everything under control.
Yeah.
Back in some way, shape, or form.
I want the ABCD back.
It's not a control.
Why can't we do ABCD at FDU again? I don't understand this.
Hey,
Can we call Sonny?
Hey, Jay, to Jeff's comment about we should have a poster. You remember, Jeff, when Scott Drew first gets to Baylor? Baylor is coming off all that crazy stuff. Well, Scott and Jerome Tang would stand underneath the basket, and with one guy with a yellow shirt that said Baylor, and then Jerome would stand right next to him with a green shirt with yellow letters that said Bears. So we used to all sit in the stands and kind of look at them and make fun of them. Well, that worked out real good for us making fun of that, didn't it? But by the way, I was speaking about them because they're both friends and our relationship. This is a story I'm not going to share publicly, but our relationship didn't get started off on the right foot. But we are really good friends now, and I'm a big fan of both of those guys. But when I get hired to South Carolina, and I'm going to give you the PG version, I said, we didn't have South Carolina basketball become kind of irrelevant. Nobody really spoke about it. Actually, Jay, when the word started getting out that I was deep in that conversation, I got calls from people in Jeff's walk of line, people in my walk of line. Don't do it. Don't do it. Don't do it. It was incredible how many people called me. They say, don't do it. But I'm dumb. That's why I'm bald and aging, because I'm stubborn and I think I can get things done. And so I take the job. I'm sitting with my staff and I said, I got a great idea. Let's go recruit, and we're going to do what Scott Drew and Jerome Tang used to do. I'm going to stand against the wall with a shirt that says huge, and my assistant's going to stand next to me with a shirt that said, and they said, Frank, you're out of your mind. You can't do that. You're going to create problems. So it's that zero signs.
You know what
I did to my guy Jay right here?
I don't know what the editing process is going to be like.
I left it alone.
We miss Calhoun. We miss Bayham. And listen, they went after me. Over the years, I've had it in, Frank knows this. I probably had it with everybody. Like, every fan base hates me at one point or another. I went to Arizona. They hate me. They hate me today because I won't rank them. You know, and I've had it with Calhoun, gotten into it with Boeheim. But I think most of those guys at least have respect for me because they know that I was there in the gyms, working my way up. I think that helped me. I do. Getting back to kind of how we started. Yeah. I think that helped me that everybody knows I was there grinding to get to this point. And I'm going to continue to grind. And I'm going to continue to talk to people. And am I going to be wrong about things? Hell yeah. Like Frank said earlier, he is too. He's going to express his opinion in the league meetings. I'm going to give you my opinion. I'm not going to be vanilla. I'm going to give it to you. Am I going to be wrong about certain? Of course I am. Everybody is. But I'm going to give it to you, which I'd rather have somebody. It's why I have a lot of respect for Doug Gottlieb. Right. Like, a lot of people don't like Doug. But you know what? Doug's going to give it to you. I'd rather learn something. I might disagree with him, but we're going to have it out. We're going to talk about it. And I'm going to probably either learn something from him or he might learn something from me. And other people, it's the same way.
I want to end this. And by the way, we really appreciate you taking over an hour of your time on
I can do this all day with Frank.
Jay, before you wrap it up, I got one question I want to ask him.
Okay, go for
it. You tell me when you want.
All right, well, let me ask you this then, because you guys have announced this the Field of 68 tip-off event. Yeah. And I'm reading about this, a mid-major round robin. This will be the first one this upcoming year.
Correct.
Just a little insight as to where that comes from and what that's going to be. And hopefully one day we'll get UMass in that conversation.
No, we want to. You know, Field of 68, we're kind of expanding as much as we can here. And one of the things that we've talked about doing, and I still want to do this, is a almost bracket buster type event at some point. Might be next year, where I get like 12 teams in and you're playing 2 games over a 3-day period in a neutral site somewhere warm, preferably, so I can get the hell out of Boston. The hard part is these days, to be honest, with all the movement, if we had done this 10 years ago, it was easy to figure out the 10 or 12 best mid-major teams. Right. By the time you figure that out, you know, you're already into May or maybe June. So it's hard to plan this these days. Anyway, FAU, Charleston, and Liberty are 3 of the best mid-majors, and they're going to be for the next few years. We know that. They've decided, and we're going to do a Field of 68 event here around this, they're going to play kind of a round robin for the next 3 years at each of their campuses. So they're going to play each other. They're going to play 2 games every year. This year it starts at FAU and Boca, so we'll be down there. Next year it goes to Charleston. The year after it goes to Liberty. We're going to do kind of a game day experience. All 3 days we're going to be down there. I don't know if we're going to stream the games on Field of 68. That's the hard part right now is
right.
There's obviously rights.
Yeah.
And FAU, everybody's going to want their games this year. So my guess is those games will be on ESPN or CBS or something like that. But if they're not, we'll stream them. You know, we did 1 game last year. We did Stephen F. Austin down at Furman. I'd love to do a UMass game. I would love to and come up and stream it or do some sort of, you know, game day with Frank and UJ and have fun there for the day. So we're expanding as much as we can, but also doing it kind of methodically and selectively.
Looking forward to that. Thanks. Yeah, we'll definitely try to continue to push that up the hill. Frank, your last question here as we let Mr. Goodman go.
Well, I'm going to ask him one short answer, Jeff. And then I'm going to ask you the complicated question second. The easy one with a short answer. Being a Massachusetts guy, what's UMass got to fix?
Boy.
Basketball.
Yeah. I mean, obviously you got to get momentum, right? You got to get momentum. And I think you got it with your hire. I think you started it with your hire. And now The key is, again, getting the right guys for you. Like, I think that's important to understand is sometimes it's not just getting the highest end talent. It's getting the guys, and you know this, and your staff has to understand this. The good thing with your staff is they all know you for the most part, other than maybe Brett Nelson doesn't know you to the same extent lately, but he knows you. He knows you, obviously. Your guys all played for you at some point or another.
There are another staff in the country where every member on his staff played for him at one time.
No, I don't think so. I don't see it. I'd be shocked. And that speaks to your loyalty. Like, that's the one thing with you. Listen,
for this nasty Groff guy that everyone hates, all my guys come back and want to work. They're all in.
Well, listen, what people, and I tell them this, what people don't understand is, like, you off the court, you are like a big teddy bear off the court. You really are.
Easy.
You kind of, I know I don't want you to get that, that out there, that people think you're soft, but you kind of are off the court. When you get you away from all this, again, you're a fun, easygoing dude who just likes to kind of, honestly, you just like people. You do. You like people. Listen, I saw you get emotional last year when I came to UMass, Jay. We were talking about both of our families, which we do more than we talk about basketball. We do. And we were talking about Frank's daughter, and he started to get a little emotional. And because he knows how I am with my daughter. And have you dropped her off yet? Not yet. You dropped her off. All right, so give me how it went. I got it. Listen, this is the most important part of the whole pod. Do we have video?
I've never been so mad at a university as I am with UMass right now for dropping volleyball 20 years ago. I got to go all the way out to Duquesne to watch her play. It's hard.
Did you cry? Did you cry?
I tried to walk away.
Yeah, smart. You have to.
Every time I was getting, I kind of walked away because I didn't want, not for me, for her.
Right.
I didn't want her.
Makes it harder for her.
I didn't want her to feel that I was vulnerable. And
yeah, Talia said that to me all the time. She's like, I've never seen you cry like that. And I'm like, man, like it's your girl. It's just, it's so hard. By the way, Jay, Talia still has on her head coaching rankings right now. No, you're two. Uh-oh. Scott Drew is one. Well, he got her to Baylor out there on a visit, and I mean, like, treated her like a recruit, like handwritten notes when we checked in the hotel room, a tour. He also did an Instagram Live with her 2 days after he won the national title. So you got to win a national title, Frank, I think.
Oh, he's good. He's good.
So, but Frank, you are number two.
Now here's the question.
Yeah.
And this is the one that because I don't know how many. I'm good. I'm as healthy. My health was bad 3 years ago. My health now is as good as it's been in a long time.
Good.
And I'm unbelievably excited to figure out how to build a program in this new environment that we're in. And where do you think college basketball's at 5 years from now?
Oh,
that's what I say.
That's $1 million question. I mean, here's the one thing I'll say. I have a lot more faith in Charlie Baker than I did in his predecessor. And not just because he's a Massachusetts guy. I think he's smart. He's forward thinking. Now he's got to dig himself out of a huge hole left by Emmert. Huge hole. And that's going to take a lot of digging to get out of that hole. I don't know. I mean, again, even look at this transfer stuff, and it's like, what do you do? The one-time transfer rule, right? Like, is the NCAA going to make these waivers? I was told a week ago that they're really not going to do many waivers, but they've done a couple. Well, like, to me, it's all or nothing. All or nothing.
So, Jeff, once they approve transfers right away because they've lost every lawsuit,
right?
How do you then win a lawsuit for a second-time transfer?
You're not. And it's just going to take somebody
a matter of time.
So then you've got kids. The hardest part for me, can I tell you, like, what the hardest thing is for me covering this sport is the constant movement and the lack of continuity with the fan base to the players. That's the hardest part for me, is when I would go in, to a school, whether it was UMass, whether it was Kansas State, whatever, you'd have a couple guys that were one and dones. But other than that, you'd have guys that grew up on that campus that had like lifelong connections to that campus. Like Hunter Dickinson's going to be at Kansas for 8 months. And I love Hunter. I do. I really like Hunter. But like his connections, his deep connections are at Michigan. They're not going to be at Kansas. If he had stayed at Michigan, I'm not saying he should have necessarily. I'm just saying this is the new world we're in. If he had stayed at Michigan, think of the connections he would have once he retires from playing, right? 35 years old. He is set because that Michigan brand is so strong. He'll be set up for the rest of his life. Now, he might have ruined those connections. I don't know if he's going to have them in 8 months in Kansas. I have a hard time with this. I have a hard time with this.
Do you think the Power 5 schools, and I remember I just spent 15 years there, you think they make them employees?
I think eventually they probably do. I think eventually they do to honestly, otherwise I don't know if the NCAA exists. That's going to be the hard part. They're going to do it because when they realize they don't have a choice, that's when they do things, right? That's why they did NIL. That's why I think they'll have to do employees. But again, it's going to cost them some money to make some money.
I fear that, and once we go, and I look at this as a person that wanted to be a high school coach, not a guy that had any interest in or believed that he could be affiliated with a high major basketball program or institution. But I look at this, it's going to ruin college athletics across the board. Because once men's basketball and football, if you make them employees, they're going to unionize. When they unionize, Title IX is out the window. And as soon as Title IX is out the window, then my wife never becomes the Atlantic 10 champion at UMass in track because she couldn't afford to come to school here. My daughter doesn't go to Duquesne to play volleyball because they probably can't afford to run a...
Well, and they're not getting any money. And then the other problem with all this is all the money is going straight to the kids, which again, I get it, but that booster that was going to give money to the athletic department is no longer giving it to the athletic department, which will help other sports. They're giving it directly to the athlete.
That's correct. So I worry about our tournament because that NCAA tournament, and I like Jay, for example, is one thing Jeff and I disagree on. I think the tournament needs to be expanded.
Jeff wants to go to 256.
No, I do not. Stop. Like, why don't we just have a tournament that starts November 7th and ends March 15th? Stop.
You know what I'm in for? Here's the only thing I'm in for the expansion. If we want to do some sort of play-in, like the NBA does, I could actually get behind a play-in for the last 8. Here's my idea. For the last 8 spots, you put 8 high majors up against 8 mid-majors to get in for those last 8 spots.
But that's like the first 4. Just make the first 4 bigger.
Right. That's fine. I'm okay with that. I'm okay. But don't put the first 4. Don't put the SWAC and the MEAC tournament champions in there every time. Do it high majors against mids, and those 8 teams go on. And I think you'd have intrigue. Like, that's what I want. I want a reason to watch. And I think the big argument is always, who do you take at the end, right? The mids that have 30 wins, like Charleston.
So,
or the crappy, the high major that finished 9th in their league, and you've been on the high major that finished 9th in its league.
Stop. I've been in the high major that finished 3rd in the league.
That too. I'm just saying.
For wins.
I know where you're going.
Got left home to take the 6th place team in the league, who lost to us head-to-head, had a worse record and worse metrics. So don't
make it make sense.
I don't want to hear that nonsense. No, on a serious note, that's a true story, by the way. But on a serious note, so if we're headed in that direction, Jeff, how UMass, St. Bonaventure, VCU, we're going to have no say in the NCAA tournament. The Power Fives, because they're the ones that generate that revenue. They're the ones that can basically buy themselves into whatever tournament or whatever they want to create.
And they don't want to play you in the
They don't want to play us. You know what the hardest part of my job is right now? And I get it. I've said this. I don't blame high major coaches. It's scheduling. They don't want to play the Atlantic 10 schools. And I'm not alone. It goes across our league. I was there. I didn't want to play A10 schools. So, but that's a different conversation. I just fear, man. I should say fear. I just worry that I'm going to end up bartending or bouncing 5 years from now, not because we can't win, but because I'm not going to like where this business is going to be 5 years from now. And
yeah, the problem is you bartending in 5 years, nobody's going to be. You can't move now. I mean, years ago you were quick, you were agile. Now nobody's going to be scared of you. Now,
if I'm bouncing, I'm a first round knockout. But if I'm bartending, I'll have the best bar in town. I can promise you. Your guy Rob Douster will be right in front of me round the clock. I know that for a fact.
Okay, guys, we'll do this again, Jeff. If you'd be willing to lend your time, I really appreciate it. Good luck at the Peach Jam. Thank you for all your time. And yeah, he's you can find him on Twitter. He's a great follow. You can use all 600 of your required tweets or tweets you get at Goodman Hoops. Read those. He's Jeff Goodman. I'm Jay Burnham, and he's just being Frank. Thanks, guys.
Appreciate you guys.